The term cat daddy is used quite literally here, as a large part of AJ's personality and media presence focuses on his love for his pets, especially his cat Mr. Tickles, which has his own social media presence. Past that, he was once hyped as the best rising talent in American open-wheel racing and has associations with big teams like Penske and Red Bull. AJ is one of my favorite drivers, but his career is filled with moments of what could have been or what should have been that frustrates me. Starting to dominate in Champ Car, goes to NASCAR. Leading the Indy 500, the seatbelts come loose. Has a NASCAR contract with one of the most dominant teams, gets suspended. So, when heading down his twisting, turning path, where did it all begin? Ironically, AJ was born in the Californian city of Los Gatos, which is Spanish for the cats, named after the cougars and mountain lions that inhabit the surrounding foothills. He was born here on the 16th of December 1981, grew up in San Jose, and lived in the nearby town of Hollister. AJ stands for Anthony James. His father wanted his initials to be AJ, like his favorite racer AJ Foyt. See, AJ's parents were race fans. More than that, his father was a bit of a hobbyist racer. Greg Allmendinger has told his son before that he lives through him. He was born into a family that did not have enough money to support Greg to race. He was on his own when it came to racing, and in his late teens he was always at the track trying to get the opportunity to race anything. He mostly drove dirt oval stuff, micro midgets, and a class of car called an Odyssey. AJ says, for better or worse, a lot of the way he acts is from seeing his father. They say while racing, his father was nicknamed Screaming Dinger. AJ can also remember seeing his father get into fistfights with his friends at the track and then be buddies in the garage the next day. Young AJ thought this was normal at first. A story goes that during a particularly poor race while driving the number 43 for Petty Motorsports, AJ was mad and complaining on the radio to his team. After the race, his father would tell him how he was listening to the radio and AJ wasn't being very helpful to the team by not speaking clearly. AJ was stunned and dumbfounded and would retort back with how he learned it from the Screaming Dinger. Greg supported his racing and his family by running a business as a carpet layer. In order to support AJ at points in his career, their family would mortgage their home for $30,000 3 different times. His mother likes to joke saying, "I tell him he can thank the California housing market for where he is today." The mother of the household is Karen Allmendinger. While Greg is nearly 2 meters tall, AJ is 5'6", Karen is only 5 feet flat, but AJ says he was scared of her. Karen was the one who picked out the names Anthony and James, and the only time he ever heard those names is from her when he was in trouble, and at that point he knew he had screwed up bad. Past those times, his mother was much calmer and easygoing when compared to the screaming one. Karen learned to enjoy racing from her husband and the couple that even watched Rick Mears win his first Indy 500 in 1979 from the infield. But by trade, Karen was a nurse. She helped support her family and son's career by working days and often nights in a medical clinic in Los Gatos, California. In the early years, while her husband was still racing, she was the one taking AJ to races and helping influence his career. However, at this time, AJ wasn't racing on 4 wheels. Starting out, AJ dreamed of racing Supercross because starting at age 5, he raced BMX bikes. He was very competitive and a bit of a hothead. He was always winning, so when he didn't win, there was a lot of crying, he says. In his region, he was ranked number 1, and nationally he ranked okay as well, but as he didn't grow as fast as the other kids did, he started to struggle. When it takes 3 pedal cranks to equal one of the other kids, he knew it was time to move on to a motorbike to even the playing field. His mother said no way. So at the age of 8, AJ started to race quarter midget cars on small ovals. By this point, AJ just loved racing and wanted to race anything. He watched everything on the TV he could. Jeff Gordon was a big idol for him growing up. But at this point, he envisioned himself becoming a sprint car driver in the World of Outlaw series. Around age 11, his parents got him a used go-kart as a gift to race on a variety of kart tracks. At the end of the year, his parents asked if he wanted a new kart for ovals or road courses. AJ said the decision was easy, and he wouldn't race another circle track for another 9 years. Over the next 8 or 9 years, he would race in various classes of the International Kart Federation and would end up with 2 Grand National Championships. Many successful drivers came from AJ's area and region. Patrick Long, Joey Hand, Jonathan Bomarito, Scott Speed, Michael McDowell, Michael Valiante, and Matt Jaskell. But there was one guy that helped convince AJ and his family that they could keep doing this. Memo Gidley. AJ says Memo raced in the older kart divisions, but he was super quick and always at the track. This is partly because he did his own mechanic work and often slept in his truck. AJ says Memo was the guy, and he was inspired because he thought we can do this, because he lived in his car and dominates racing. AJ remembers walking to high school games past a Ferrari dealership with his mother and telling her someday he would buy her a Ferrari. But unfortunately, to continue in racing, the Allmendingers would need a bigger budget. His karting successes would attract the attention of kart star Paul Tracy. Paul would support AJ to drive for his karting team in the 2001 SK USA Pro Moto Super Pro Tour. Paul would give AJ advice on people he needed to connect with if AJ wanted to secure finances to advance into racing cars. In his age group, AJ was one of the leading prospects from the USA and a sea of talents from other countries. This country kinsmanship got him the support of John Skip Barber himself, as well as another industry insider, Rick Radicek. AJ started his venture into the 2001 Formula Dodge National Championship by crashing in his first practice, and crashing in the third as well. While his supporters helped pay to get him into the series, he still had to cover crash damage, which is why his parents had to mortgage their house. AJ says after this he tried to race to not crash and made even more mistakes. When he started to relax and race normally, things went better and he would end up losing the championship by only 2 points at the end of the year. His good performances had gotten the attention of Jeremy Shaw, president of Team USA Scholarship Foundation, and their support sent AJ and Brian Sellers to New Zealand to race Formula Ford. AJ would race 7 of the 16 rounds. In the 2002 Tallies Championship, he would end 11th in the standings with a pole and a podium. After this season, AJ would return home and enter a test day competition for the 2002 Barber Dodge Pro Series, and again he would crash in the test, but he would still get a ride in the series after his supporters helped sweep it under the rug. AJ didn't have enough money left to do the whole season, or even make the second race. If he wanted to come back, he would have to win the first race. He did. He also won the second race. In 10 races, he only finished off the podium once in 4th place. 6 wins, 1 second place, and 2 third places, leading to winning the championship by 70 points. Again, his good performances got the attention of Toyota Atlantic's driver Carl Russo, and he wanted AJ to drive for his team. The team test would occur at Pueblo Motorsports Park in Colorado, USA, between AJ, Brian Sellers, and Patrick Long. The guys would watch the team's other driver, Aaron Justice, do laps, and then would privately get around each. AJ noticed Aaron not doing the last turn full speed and asked the experienced engineering team and Carl if it was possible to take it full throttle, and they both agreed you couldn't do it. AJ took to the track second and took the final corner easy the first time through, but by the second lap he was taking it flat out. He did 11 laps on the ragged edge trying to show he was the best pick, and coming along the backside of the track he lost control and absolutely destroyed the car. AJ says he was sure his career was over. Carl was intimidating, but when he asked what happened, AJ says he pulled a double bluff. He puffed out his chest and said, "Yeah, I lost the car, but I still believe I'm the best choice. Yeah, I always do this, crash in the test. I don't like these things, too much pressure. I get my mistakes out of the way early, then I win the championship. If Carl doesn't hire me, someone will, and I would understand why you may not hire me, but if you didn't, I would be sure Carl's team never won a race." He then said thanks, turned around, and silently burst into tears and headed back to the motorhome where Brian still waited. All he said to Brian was that he had to beat Patrick. AJ and Brian had gotten along while in New Zealand, while Patrick had been racing in Europe. Patrick had also knew the engineering team, so both drivers kind of thought this test was already decided before it began. A week later, Carl called AJ saying he was on the team. Surprised AJ asked why. Carl said they had asked each driver if they thought you could take the last turn at full speed, and they all said it was impossible. Because the test had been done in private, they didn't see AJ do it for 10 laps consecutively. Also, the team agreed out of all the drivers, they wanted to compete against AJ the least. Driving for RuSPORT in the 2003 Toyota Atlantic Championship, AJ would tie a record set by Gilles Villeneuve in 1976 by getting 9 poles in 12 races. He would also win a record-shattering 7 races as a rookie and win the championship. This performance would lead to 2 important things. He would develop a sponsorship relationship with Team Red Bull, and Carl would move his team up to compete in the Champ Car World Series. In 2004, he would get 2 podiums and finish 6th in the championship. During this time, he would also get an offer from Red Bull to test an attempt to go race in Europe, but AJ said he wasn't interested as he didn't feel like a European type of guy, and had no grand ambition other than being able to simply race. Instead, the offer went to the younger Scott Speed, whose main goal was F1. In 2005, he would get 5 podiums and 1 pole, finishing 5th in the championship. In this year, RuSPORT would hire Justin Wilson to become his teammate. AJ admits he was intimidated by Justin due to his experience in both Le Mans and Formula 1, but they ended up becoming best friends. Justin would end up winning the first race for the team at Toronto, and AJ would crash, trying to at least move up from 3rd to finish 2nd. In his mind, AJ had to win the next race at Edmonton or he was a failure. He dominated the race. He and Justin had a 30-second lead over 3rd place Sebastian Bourdais until a late safety car. Justin would spin on cold tires under caution, leaving AJ unprotected from Bourdais. AJ knew he just needed a few corners to get away from Bourdais, but that wouldn't happen as he would crash before getting away. After Justin Wilson passed away, a team member informed AJ that after this race, Justin came and apologized to the whole team for costing them and AJ the race for spinning on cold tires. AJ says Justin was a truly classy man and a better friend than he could have hoped to be. In 2006, AJ would debut in the 24 Hours of Daytona, finishing 2nd, driving for friend Michael Shank. However, in Champ Car, he was released from his team after the 4th round. At the suggestion of Paul Tracy, AJ was nearly immediately hired to take the 2nd seat at the Forsythe racing team alongside Paul. In his first 3 races for the team, he would win all 3. He went from career over to 1 race shy of tying a consecutive wins record. He would get 2 more wins that year and was somehow in championship contention against Sebastian Bourdais. However, 2 poor finishes and missing the last race of the year would see him finishing 3rd in the championship, 13 points behind his former teammate Justin. Now, he missed the last race of the year because he had accepted a very lucrative deal from Red Bull to go race NASCAR. Yes, the driver who had raced some ovals when he was young but chose road courses agreed to go to race NASCAR. When doing these videos, I usually stop when the driver reaches their peak series. However, with AJ, defining what is a peak series is sort of hard. At this point, he is still to race over a decade in NASCAR, race some IndyCar, and return to the 24 at Daytona multiple years. Because there's so much more to say and this has already been going on a while, I'm going to stop here and finish it in a part 2. So if you enjoyed this, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe if you want to find out when I post part 2. And I'll see you next time on the AJ Allmendinger Appreciation Tour.